The 2021 school year is going to be very different.
There's no way to eliminate the risk. You can reduce it quite a lot. You can reduce it for the teachers and administrators. And we've seen from other places around the world is when you do that, schools are not a source of outbreaks, and it is generally a manageable risk.
Dr. Sharfstein, Dr. Zhao, Dr. Fauci all believe that kids who are right now in low COVID exposure areas, they should be able to resume to school without much of a problem. But in areas that right now are hot zones, and with how quickly this virus is spreading, it's also entirely possible some kids will be online all year. Buster?
Yeah, I love the Corona Academy. All right, Tom, thanks very much. No group has a greater stake in safely reopening schools than teachers in New York. Here in New York, once the country's biggest hotspot, but now relatively under control, some teachers are concerned about the city's plan to reopen its 1,800 schools for a mix of in-person and remote classes. NBC News and QB correspondent Antonia Hilton spoke with some of them.
Shut it down! Shut it down!
Alex Jello has taught special education students in New York City for 7 years.
Black schools matter.
He's used to challenging environments, but returning to the classroom in the midst of a pandemic doesn't sit right.
I'm pissed off. I think they're so disconnected from reality.
What are your personal fears about what it would mean for you to be back in a school building with your kids?
My personal fear is that one of my students would get it and that they would die. Like that's the absolute worst case scenario, or somebody would contract it and spread it to their families.
New York City leaders announced public schools would return to a mix of in-person and remote instruction, now that the city's infection rates are under control. Alex is a member of a small social justice caucus within the larger United Federation of Teachers Union, called the Movement of Rank and File Educators, and they're considering calling for a strike or sick out. The city consulted closely with union leadership on reopening plans, but some teachers felt like their voices weren't being heard.
Shut it down! Shut the school down!
By city leaders like schools chancellor Richard Carranza.
What I have heard from parents is that they need their children in school. So of the 1.1 million students in New York City, we have a little over 300,000 families that have elected to start the school year remote learning. That's 3/4 of our families that, as of right now, are saying we will go to a blended learning environment as long as it's safe.
How will the city respond if teachers decide to strike?
I don't know, but I'm appealing to teachers to say to them, we hear you, we understand. This is based on the medical science, and we've set thresholds that if that number starts creeping the other way, we will pivot to remote learning without hesitation. I'm just appealing to teachers to understand that our children need us. They need us now more than ever.
Some of them feel as though rank and file educators weren't brought to the table in the negotiations around reopening. Why weren't regular educators included in those conversations?
Well, I've had a number of town halls where there have been teachers that have been part of those town halls, but I do know that the UFT, which represents teachers, has been working with us shoulder to shoulder. I've been a teacher as well. These are scary times for all of us.
Vanessa Costco plans to return to teach English at her high school in Brooklyn. She loves her students, but she's worried about her family.
I would be putting my mom at risk of COVID. She has high blood pressure. She's undocumented, so she has no health insurance. And if she were to get sick, I don't know if she would want to go to a hospital because of her status.
Do you think there's a chance you'd strike?
I don't think so.
To what extent does your family depend on you being able to work?
A lot, because I'm the one that's helping with rent right now.
Look, it's mommy.
Alex has a 2-year-old daughter, Miriam. His ex-partner, Gabby, is also a teacher. And they don't know how they'll juggle childcare this fall.
We all came into this with the idea that we want to do this job, to service our children, to do our best. In good times, it's frustrating. But in times like this, it's terrifying.